Aisha stood outside her own home with nothing but a plastic bag and a trembling breath. Her father's last words still echoed in her ears. "Come back only when you've apologized to your sister." But as the sun rose the next morning, Aisha whispered a single word that changed everything. "All right." And she walked toward a truth that would shatter the entire family. Aisha walked into the house tired, her body aching after a long day, but her heart was light because she had just gotten her first promotion. She imagined the smile on her father's face, maybe a hug, maybe a proud word. Instead, she heard loud crying coming from the living room. Her sister, Senna, was on the floor, tears streaming down her face, wailing as if the world had ended. Aisha's chest tightened, and before she could say anything, her father appeared, his face red with anger. "You fix this," he shouted, pointing at her. He didn't wait to hear what really happened. He didn't care about her side. All he wanted was silence in the house, even if it meant hurting her. Aisha opened her mouth to explain, to tell him she had done nothing wrong, but he cut her off with a wave of his hand. His eyes were hard, unmoving. The door loomed before her like a punishment. With her small bag in hand, Aisha stepped outside. The cold air hit her like a wall, but it wasn't the cold that made her shiver. It was the sudden emptiness, the realization that she had been thrown out by the people who were supposed to love her. Her heart ached, heavier than the night wind, and each step away from the house felt like leaving a part of herself behind. She walked slowly, trying to hold back tears, but they came anyway, mixing with the chill as she realized she had nowhere to go and no one on her side. That night, Aisha understood something she had never wanted to believe. Sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones who hurt you the most. And she was on her own. Senna ran to their friends and parents, telling them a story that wasn't true. She said Aisha had insulted her, ruined her favorite dress, and made her look foolish in front of everyone. Her voice trembled, but her words were sharp, designed to hurt. Aisha didn't know that this was not the first time. For years, Senna had been spinning little lies about her. Stories so small that nobody thought much of them at first. She said Aisha said things she never did, blamed her for small accidents, and slowly, everyone began to doubt Aisha. But now that Aisha was starting to shine, getting promotions, earning respect at work, Senna's jealousy had grown into something bigger, darker. She wanted everyone to believe Aisha was the problem, to make her seem unworthy and weak. The lie about the dress and the humiliation was just the tip of the iceberg. It wasn't just a story. This lie had power. It could change what their parents thought. It could control how people saw Aisha. And it could even take away the life she had worked so hard to build. Senna had waited for the perfect moment, watching Aisha rise little by little, feeling the sting of being in her sister's shadow. And now, with one carefully told story, she had created a storm. Aisha had no idea that while she was working hard and dreaming big, a web of lies was spreading behind her back, designed to destroy her. This wasn't just jealousy anymore. It was calculated, cruel, and dangerous. Senna's words had the ability to make their parents turn against Aisha completely, to make them forget all the good she had done, to erase her victories and replace them with shame. And the worst part was, Aisha had no clue what was coming. She couldn't see the trap, couldn't guess the betrayal that had been quietly building for years. All she knew was that the next morning, her life would feel different, as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet, because one lie, told in just the right way, could change everything she thought was safe. This lie wasn't just about a dress or a small fight. It was about control, about jealousy, and about a sister who refused to be left behind. And Aisha, completely unaware, was about to face the most dangerous storm of her life. Aisha sat on the hard wooden bench of the small church, her arms wrapped tightly around her tiny bag. The night was cold, but she barely noticed the chill. Her heart felt heavier than the air around her. She didn't cry. She couldn't. She felt nothing but numbness, like someone had turned off the part of her that hoped for love or fairness. Hours passed slowly, the church empty and silent except for the distant sound of the city outside. She watched shadows move across the walls, thought about the life she had left behind, and for the first time, she let herself imagine a life where she didn't have to beg for approval from people who never cared about her. When the first light of morning spilled through the stained glass windows, soft and golden, something inside her shifted. She looked at her reflection in the dusty window pane, at her tired face, at the eyes that had held so much pain for so long. And in that quiet moment, she made a decision. She would no longer chase the love she had never received. She would no longer apologize for things she hadn't done, for mistakes she hadn't made. She realized that her worth didn't depend on their acceptance, and for the first time, she felt a spark of freedom. Her phone rang. She recognized the number immediately, her father. He probably thought she would beg, thought she would cry, thought she would apologize and come back to make peace with Senna and the lies. He didn't know that the night had changed her. She answered slowly, her voice calm, steady, and nothing like the trembling girl he had thrown out. "All right," she said simply. Just one word. No explanations, no cheers, no pleading. That single word carried more strength than he could ever imagine. She ended the call and set the phone down. Aisha stood up, feeling the weight of the night lift slightly off her shoulders. She walked out of the church, the morning sun warm on her face, and with every step, she felt herself moving toward a truth she had never expected. The truth was not about revenge or proving them wrong. It was about discovering herself. She realized that her life didn't need their permission, their forgiveness, or even their understanding. With each step down the empty street, she felt lighter, freer, and more alive than she had in years. That one word, "all right," was not just an answer to her father. It was a promise to herself. She would no longer be anyone's prisoner, and she was finally ready to walk into the life she deserved. Aisha walked up the familiar path to her grandfather Mawu's house, her heart heavy but hoping for comfort. Grandpa Mawu had always been different from her parents. He never yelled, never judged, never made her feel small. He just listened, really listened, and somehow that made the world feel less cold. She knocked softly, and when he opened the door, his warm smile made a small ache in her chest ease for a moment. She stepped inside, and without a word, sank into the chair across from him. Grandpa Mawu watched her quietly, noticing the tiredness in her eyes, the tight grip on her bag. After a long pause, he leaned forward and asked gently, "Aisha, what exactly did you apologize for?" His voice was calm, patient, as if he already knew the answer but wanted her to speak it out. Aisha felt a lump in her throat. She whispered almost too softly for herself to hear. "Nothing. Because I did nothing." Grandpa Mawu nodded slowly, as if he had been waiting for her to realize that. He reached over to an old wooden drawer, the kind that smelled faintly of cedar and thyme. He pulled out a dusty envelope, worn at the edges, the kind of envelope that carried secrets and memories. Aisha's eyes widened. "Child, it's time you know something your parents hid," he said. His voice carried a weight that made her sit straighter, alert, wondering what truth could be so important that it had been kept from her for so long. She took a deep breath and leaned closer, her hands trembling slightly. Grandpa Mawu carefully handed her the envelope. The paper felt heavy in her hands, as if it carried more than just words or documents. She looked at him, and he nodded, silently urging her to open it. Aisha's fingers shook as she lifted the flap and peeked inside. The room was quiet except for the soft ticking of the old clock on the wall, but inside her mind raced. She had always felt powerless, trapped by lies and unfairness, but somehow she sensed that what was inside that envelope might change everything. Grandpa Mawu's eyes met hers, calm and steady, full of trust and love. "Everything you need to know, everything they tried to hide from you, it's in there," he said. Aisha felt a strange mix of fear and hope, knowing that after years of being controlled and misunderstood, she was finally about to see a truth that was completely hers. She held the envelope close, realizing that this moment could be the beginning of a life she never thought she could have. The secrets of the past were about to give her a chance for freedom. Aisha carefully opened the envelope, her fingers trembling. Inside, she found a property deed, a bank passbook, and a neatly folded letter. Her eyes widened as she saw her own name written on every single document. She couldn't believe it. All of this was hers. Her late grandmother had left it for her, hidden away for years, waiting for the right moment. A wave of shock and disbelief hit her. She looked up at Grandpa Mawu, searching for answers, and he nodded gently, as if reading her thoughts. "Your parents refused to let you know about this until you were married," he said softly. "They wanted to control you, to keep you under their power. But your grandmother, she wanted you to stand on your own feet. This is yours, Aisha. All of it." Aisha's heart raced. She sank slightly into the chair, her knees weakening under the weight of what she was holding. It wasn't just money or property. It wasn't just something to buy things or live comfortably. This was something far bigger. This was freedom. Freedom from the lies, from the manipulation, from the unfair expectations, from being blamed for things she never did. It was a life she could finally call her own. She unfolded the letter and began to read, her eyes scanning every word, absorbing the love and foresight of the grandmother she had adored so much. The letter told her that she was capable, strong, and deserving, that she didn't need anyone's permission to live her life, to make her own choices, to be happy. Aisha felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but this time they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of joy, of the realization that everything she had worked for on her own was about to grow, because now she had the foundation she never knew existed. She held the deed and passbook close to her chest, feeling the solid proof of her grandmother's love. For years she had felt small, trapped, and powerless. But now, with these documents in her hands, the world felt open. She could breathe again. She could plan, build, and move forward without fear. The house, the money, the letter. It wasn't just inheritance. It was a message that she was seen, that she was valued, and that she could rise above all the lies and cruelty she had faced. Aisha's hands shook, not from fear, but from the sudden rush of hope and power. She realized that her life was no longer dictated by her parents' opinions or her sister's jealousy. She finally understood. She didn't just inherit wealth. She inherited the right to live freely, the right to be herself, the right to choose her own path. And in that moment, Aisha felt more alive than she ever had before. A few days later, Aisha's parents showed up at Grandpa Mawu's house, their faces red with anger. They stormed in, expecting to scold her, to force her to apologize to Senna, and to restore their control. But before they could even open their mouths, Grandpa Mawu calmly reached into his drawer and placed the envelope with the documents right on the table in front of them. The room went completely silent. The only sound was the soft ticking of the old clock on the wall. Aisha stood tall, her back straight, her hands folded calmly in front of her. She looked at them and spoke in a voice steady and clear, one that held a strength they had never heard before. "You threw me out, but you forgot I'm someone's granddaughter too," she said. Every word carried the weight of years spent being blamed, humiliated, and ignored. She didn't yell. She didn't beg. She simply spoke the truth that they could no longer deny. Her mother's eyes widened, and without thinking, she reached out to grab the documents. She wanted to snatch them, to erase the proof of Aisha's independence, to regain the control they had lost. But Grandpa Mawu moved faster. He slammed his cane onto the floor with a loud crack, making both of them jump back. His eyes were sharp, commanding, and filled with authority. "Touch it and you leave my house," he said, his voice steady but powerful, leaving no room for argument. Aisha felt a calm sense of power wash over her. For the first time, she didn't have to fight alone. Grandpa Mawu was her shield, and together they held a force her parents had never expected. Her father opened his mouth to argue, to yell, but no words came. The documents on the table were not just papers. They were a barrier, a wall of truth that could not be broken by anger or lies. Her parents looked at each other, suddenly realizing that this wasn't going to be like before. The rules had changed, and Aisha was no longer the powerless child they could push around. The silence stretched heavy and suffocating, as they understood for the first time that their control was gone. They had expected tears, apologies, and weakness. Instead, they faced a calm, confident granddaughter, backed by a grandfather who would not let anyone take what was rightfully hers. Aisha's chest rose and fell slowly. She was ready for whatever came next, but she also knew that the fight for respect had already been won. The papers were hers, the freedom was hers, and nothing they said or did could ever take that away. For the first time, she felt completely untouchable. Senna collapsed onto the floor in front of Aisha, her face wet with tears and her voice trembling as she sobbed loudly. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Aisha. Please forgive me," she wailed, flailing her hands as if the intensity of her performance could force Aisha to take her back. Her words were desperate, dramatic, filled with the kind of fake guilt she had perfected over the years. But Aisha didn't flinch. She stood there quietly, watching her sister, feeling nothing like the scared girl she used to be. Aisha knew the truth. She could see it in Senna's eyes, in the way her voice cracked not from regret but from panic. This wasn't sorrow. This wasn't true remorse. This was fear. Fear that the control Senna had once held over the family, over their parents, over Aisha herself, was slipping away. She had built her lies carefully, played the victim, twisted stories, and for years it had worked. But now, faced with the evidence, with Aisha calm and steady, the power she had clung to was gone. Aisha took a slow step closer, her voice calm and unwavering. "I won't hate you," she said softly, looking straight into her sister's eyes. "But I won't let you break me anymore." Her words carried no anger, no threat, just truth. And in that moment, the weight of years of manipulation, jealousy, and lies finally hit Senna. She froze, the tears still running down her cheeks, but her dramatic movements stopped. Her hands fell to her sides. Her body stiffened. The mask she had worn for so long, the mask that had fooled their parents and everyone around them, cracked completely. Senna tried to speak again, tried to twist her story, tried to cry louder, but nothing worked. The room was quiet except for her shaky breaths. No tantrum, no pleading, no fake performance could save her this time. Aisha had changed, and the rules of their world had changed with her. She wasn't the scared, powerless child anymore. She was strong, calm, and untouchable. Aisha looked at her sister once more and took a deep breath, letting the moment settle. She didn't need to yell, didn't need to prove herself with anger. The truth was clear, and it was undeniable. Senna's tears were not for forgiveness, they were for lost power. And as Aisha turned and walked away, she felt lighter than she had in years. The chains of fear, manipulation, and lies were finally broken. Senna had lost, and Aisha had finally claimed her freedom. Aisha stepped into her grandmother's house for the first time alone, her footsteps echoing softly on the wooden floors. The house was old, the walls lined with memories, the air carrying a faint scent of flowers and polish, but it was beautiful in a quiet, comforting way. She walked slowly through each hall, touching the banister, peeking into the rooms, imagining her grandmother smiling at her from the corners, telling her it was finally her turn to be happy. The house felt alive, as if it had been waiting all these years just for her. She unpacked her small bag and sat for a moment, letting the silence and calm settle around her. For the first time, she felt a sense of belonging that wasn't tied to anyone's approval. She looked at the peeling paint, the scratched floors, the empty rooms, and a quiet excitement grew inside her. With her promotion money and the savings she had carefully kept for herself, she began to plan. One room at a time, she started renovating. She painted the walls soft, warm colors that made the space feel like home. She repaired broken shelves, polished the old wooden floors until they shone, and added small touches that reminded her of her grandmother. It wasn't about showing off, and it wasn't about revenge. Every brush stroke, every nail hammered, every curtain hung was for peace. She wanted a home that was hers in every sense, not owned by anyone else, not controlled by anyone else, a place where she could breathe freely and feel safe. Every corner she fixed felt like a wound closing, a scar from years of hurt slowly fading away. The house became a reflection of her heart, strong, patient, and healing. As the days passed, Aisha's life began to feel fuller. The house, once empty and silent, now held warmth, small joys, and a sense of security she had never known. She decorated with things that made her smile, small keepsakes from her travels, a few pictures, and even a tiny plant on the windowsill that reminded her of new beginnings. It became more than a house. It became her sanctuary, the home she had always deserved but never been allowed to have. In every repaired wall, in every clean floor, in every bright corner, Aisha felt a quiet triumph. This was not about proving anything to anyone else. This was about reclaiming her life, her space, her happiness. For the first time, she realized that true peace didn't come from others. It came from choosing it for herself. And as she walked through the halls, imagining her grandmother's smile, she felt it deep in her chest. She had finally moved into what was always meant for her. Months passed, and Aisha's life slowly began to take shape. The house felt warm and alive, her days filled with small routines she chose for herself, moments of quiet joy, and the freedom she had always longed for. She painted, cleaned, arranged, and lived in a world that belonged only to her. She was finally finding peace, feeling strong in a way she had never felt before. Then one afternoon she saw familiar figures walking up the driveway. Her parents were there, smiling gently, their voices soft and practiced. "Aisha, we miss you," her mother said, almost too sweetly. "We were worried about you," her father added, his tone carefully measured. "We want the family back together." Aisha stood by the doorway, listening quietly. Her heart didn't race like it used to. There was no panic, no hope that they had come with true love or understanding. She watched them carefully, noticing the way their eyes flickered toward the house, the way their hands hovered nervously, the way their smiles seemed just a little too forced. She realized immediately that this wasn't about her. This wasn't about making amends or truly wanting to be a family again. They wanted the house, the property, the things her grandmother had left her, the freedom and the life she had fought to claim. Aisha's voice was calm, steady, stronger than it had ever been. She asked them a single question, simple but sharp. "Did you come here for me, or for what belongs to me?" The question hung in the air. Her parents exchanged glances, and for the first time, they couldn't hide anything. Their practiced smiles faltered. Their gentle voices wavered. They didn't answer. The silence spoke louder than any apology, louder than any pleading words. Aisha took a deep breath, feeling the weight of years lift from her shoulders. She opened the gate slowly, the morning sun glinting off the polished metal, and looked at them one last time. Her voice was soft but carried the authority of someone who had finally claimed her life. "Please leave," she said. There was no yelling, no drama, no tears. Just truth. They stood there, stunned, realizing that the control they had once wielded was gone. Aisha had built a life that didn't need their approval, didn't need their permission, and didn't need their presence. She closed the gate gently, hearing the echo of their footsteps retreating down the driveway. And in that quiet moment, she smiled softly to herself, feeling the peace she had fought so hard for, knowing that this time, nothing and no one could take it away. Months later, Aisha stood in her living room, sunlight pouring through the windows, warming the soft walls painted in colors she had chosen herself. The house smelled faintly of fresh paint and polished wood, and every corner held something she had picked or fixed with her own hands. There were small plants on the windowsills, pictures of her travels, and simple furniture that made the space feel like her own. She wasn't rich and she didn't need to be. She wasn't famous, and she didn't care for attention. She wasn't seeking revenge, because she had learned that the most powerful thing wasn't money or status. It was freedom. She walked slowly across the room, running her fingers along the shelves she had repaired, the walls she had painted, the floors she had polished. Every touch reminded her of the nights she had cried alone, the doors she had walked out of, the lies she had endured, and every step reminded her that she had survived, that she had fought for herself when nobody else would, and that she had finally won in a way her family could never take from her. Aisha sat down on the couch, letting her eyes drift to the window. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow across the room. It felt like the world had slowed down just for her, like time itself was honoring her courage and her patience. She thought of her parents, of Senna, of the years of hurt and betrayal, and realized that none of it mattered anymore. Not because she had forgiven them, but because she had chosen herself instead. She had built something real, something lasting, something that belonged only to her. A soft smile spread across her face as she whispered to the empty room. "I didn't lose a family. I escaped one." The words felt powerful, a release and a promise all at once. Here, in this quiet, warm space, she was not anyone's problem, not anyone's problem, not anyone's responsibility, not anyone's pawn. Peace was hers, unconditional. And love was no longer a weapon aimed at her heart. She felt safe, strong, and alive in a way she had never known. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the horizon, Aisha leaned back, closed her eyes for a moment, and breathed deeply. Everything she had worked for, every sacrifice, every tear, every lonely night, had led her here. She had her home, her independence, and her dignity. And in that calm, golden light, she realized the truth she had been searching for all along. Happiness isn't found in pleasing others. It's found in standing tall for yourself, in claiming the life that is yours, and in building a world where you are finally free.